What gives when it looks like you're doing really good ISTDP, you're getting breakthroughs and unlockings, and you're having all these portraits, the patient is working through feelings, and yet, after all of that, a dimension of the patient's life remains crippled. The symptomatology remains largely intact. What's going on here? Well, a multitude of reasons could explain the scenario. Maybe you just need to go deeper and get to deeper pathogenic zones within the patient's unconscious. There could be a number of reasons. But the culprit that I have in mind, that I want to say a word or two about today, I've spotted it in my own work, obviously, and in the work of my trainees. But what I'm referring to is a defensive mode. It's a defensive process that masquerades as genuine engagement in the therapeutic task. We're looking at a situation where ultimately you and the patient are at cross purposes, even though it doesn't look that way, even though there's been indications that their will is online and that they really want to do the work of facing themselves towards the end of resolving neurotic suffering. So by now, I'm sure many of you realize I'm talking about forms of compliance, forms of trying to manage the relationship. It's not uncommon for there to be a situation where the patient is thinking at some level, maybe even if it isn't conscious, if I give you, my therapist, what you're wanting, if I go with a program here, then maybe at the end of this, we'll be best buds. Or with a more projective process, where there's this punitive superego being projective, if I go along with you, you won't hurt me, you won't reject me. Or you have a patient who structures their life around chasing experiences and hoping that the next experience will do the trick. And they're preoccupied trying to manage their symptoms rather than actually getting to the engine of them. And they're approaching the ISTDP treatment with that frame of mind. And so they're indicating, yes, face my feelings, yes, absolutely. But really, the thinking is ultimately in order to manage, okay? They see it as a technique. And then if I can only utilize this portraiting technique, then all will be well. And so the treatment will stall out and flatten out because there is this motivation to throw a technique at the problem to help the patient manage the problem. And so ultimately they're at cross purposes. That's ultimately antithetical to really facing oneself. And so those are just a few examples of what could be the underlying drivers. The end result will be, the shell of it all will be a form of compliance and trying to manage the relationship, but the unique and often nuanced drivers and motivations that go into this picture of compliance and management mode can be very, very varied and unique. I just mentioned a few of them. But a lot of times, that's why a course of treatment is stuck. There is apparent buy-in, there is an apparent conscious therapeutic alliance, but ultimately, a defensive process has co-opted the therapeutic endeavor, is masquerading as genuine engagement in the therapeutic task, but it's by appearance only. And you can have these patients that are just good at getting unlockings. They're good at it, and things don't get better. And that is because ultimately they're pseudo unlockings. They're not genuine. There are underlying motivations that are at cross purposes with genuinely facing oneself to resolve neurotic suffering, to resolve our own contributions to our own suffering. All right, enough of me prattling on. Hopefully that gave you something to think about. Take care. Till next time. Bye-bye.